Well, hey everybody, welcome into Pushing the Limits. It's wonderful to have you all here. Today I have the lovely Sandy Nelson with me, and she is going to be talking about something called Kaatsu Training, which I'm really excited to put on your radar for you to all learn from Sandy what this is all about and how it might help you in your life. So welcome to the show, Sandy. It's lovely to
Oh,
have you.
thank you, Lisa. And I have to say, I'm so impressed not only from your ultra long distance running, but your ultra motivational work. I mean, I've scouted around on the internet and looked at your material. You're just fabulous. So
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
thrilled to be here.
Oh,
Thrilled to
that's
be here.
That's really, really kind. Now, can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and then how you got into Katsu?
Sure, sure. I'm in my mid 70s, and at my age, people begin to worry about things like dementia and sarcopenia, where you get muscle wasting, and osteoporosis. And in fact, the number one client for Katsu, surprisingly, it was a surprise to me. You think it might be someone like a guy who wants to build big muscles and get strong and athletic. Our number one customer is a woman over 50 who's worried about dementia, bone loss, and muscle loss. So we have a wonderful message, not only for those women, but for all people, because no matter where you are in your progress with your physical development and maintaining your health, all of us have concerns these days about maintaining and improving what we have and warding off some of the worst effects of getting older or becoming sick. And this is one of the reasons I'm so grateful I found Katsu. I was at a low point. I was very sick with Meniere's, which is a disorder of the inner middle ear where you develop vertigo and tinnitus and hearing loss. And I was so dizzy and I was in bed, unable to really get around and do what I normally did. And when you're in a spot like that, many of us, pick up our devices and we'll start scrolling and watching YouTubes. And I chanced upon a YouTube with Dr. Mercola. We all know Joe Mercola.
Oh,
He's a
yes.
monster. And
Yeah.
he was raving about this thing called Katsu. And before he even finished the video, I was on the phone ordering my Katsu device. I was convinced that this would be great. And sure enough, I got my device and started using it. And what I found was that within, I would say, 2 weeks, I was really back on my feet, doing much better, becoming more active, getting back to my exercise routine and enjoying life. And at that point, I approached the company with questions and found that they were so responsive. When I called the first time, the owner of the company answered the phone. And I was able to have a great call with him. And we became friends. And I began, at his request, I began working with his company. And I think he saw a role for me, Lisa, frankly, because of my age. Most of the people in the company are young and athletic, and they're not older women. And I think he felt that I would be a good liaison with that sector of their market. So he invited me to work with Katsu.
Wow, wow. And Katsu has a very long tradition. This was a Japanese, it's the name Katsu. Dr. Yoshiaki Sato was the
Very good.
original was the
Yeah.
original inventor. Tell us his story a little bit and
Oh,
how that came to
Dr.
be.
Sato is just phenomenal. He's older than I am. I think he's probably 76 or 7, something in there. And he chanced upon the mechanism of action that developed into Katsu in a very interesting way. Symbolically, to me, it was very interesting. He was practicing a seated meditation in a Japanese shrine where you kneel down and your lower legs kind of get numb.
Hmm.
And he noticed when he stood up that his calf muscles were very swollen,
Hmm.
bulky, as if you had been working out with weights. And he
Good.
was a bodybuilder. He was interested in, physical culture. So he noticed that and he began to experiment with the ways to restrict blood flow in the lower part of the body. And over time, he developed this whole application of applying gentle pressure to the limbs and then releasing it. More importantly, we have a special cyclic formula, an algorithm that's patented, where the device is pressurized for 30 seconds, then it releases for 5 seconds, and it repeats back and forth. So you get the cyclic pressure. And they found that unlike constant pressure, which is what you get with what are called BFR bands, blood flow restriction, which, if you had blood flow restriction bands on and you had Kaatsu bands on, you wouldn't really see visually that much difference in them, but they're completely different.
Right.
And one of the biggest battles for us is to make sure that people understand the difference between Kaatsu and other things like BFR.
Right.
BFR bands, for example, are just really repurposed tourniquets. And they provide occlusion where it clamps down on the blood flow. And it can be up to 50 to 80% occlusion, which can be very painful. With Kaatsu, when you put the band on, even when it's set at a high intensity, you still have 100% of the arterial flow into that banded limb. This is a huge difference, and it's an important difference because it adds not only to the efficacy of the therapy, because it's been shown in studies that with the cyclic off and on pressure, we get this wonderful biochemical response, which we'll talk about later. But by avoiding that constant clamping down pressure, the body responds immeasurably better. It's so much more therapeutic. So we're very, very different from BFR.
That's a really good distinction for us, because I was unsure, because I've done some blood flow restriction training, not a lot, but a little bit, and tried it out. And I understand the principle behind it, and having that explanation that it's not actually, so it's in a much more controlled cyclical fashion and not blocking the arterial flow. So that is the main difference. And then that's having lots of biochemicals. So when people are listening to this, they're going, why would you want to restrict blood flow? Isn't that bad? When we get pins and needles and we lie on our side or something and get pins and needles, and we worry about that being.
You should not, when Kaatsu is used correctly, you should not have any pins and needles and no numbness. So again, we're in a whole different category. Plus, it's been shown by studies that the biochemical benefits are much stronger with the cyclic on and off without that complete occlusion. So there are a lot of good reasons to choose Kaatsu. One of them, again, if your audience are like you, ultra athletes, elite athletes, they're going to be interested in Kaatsu for its benefits in repairing your body after an extreme workout during recovery. Kaatsu is fabulous for helping the body move the waste, the metabolic waste out of the tissues efficiently. And it also helps with a hormonal response to help the tissues repair. So in recovery mode, it's fabulous. But for the man or woman on the street, the average everyday person who's not out there setting world records, but simply wants to stay healthy and strong, with Kaatsu, again, you're going to get that wonderful biochemical boost, that hormonal response. Each and every time you use the Kaatsu bands, you're going to get that burst of human growth hormone, the IGF-1, you're going to get VEGF, BDNF, nitric oxide levels will go up. The whole thing is just across the board an improvement over your baseline.
That is there's so much to unpack in that last statement. There's so much, then that's fantastic, right? Like IGF-1, I do a lot of education on peptides and taking IGF-1s and different supplements that support IGF-1 and other things that support BDNF and other things that help with hormonal support and bioidentical hormone replacement and all of these things, and muscle growth and hypertrophy and all of these things that we're trying to achieve as we get older, cardiovascular health. And when I heard about this, and I heard this from my client, Linda Harris, who's a fabulous lady.
Great
Thank you so much,
job.
Linda, for connecting us. And she was like, I do a lot of Kaatsu training and that helps this, and this. And I'm like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And, my listeners know that I have a mum who's in her 80s and she's had a lot of medical problems. And I'm always looking for ways for her to get the benefits of training without having to train really hard because she can't, right? Because of her
Well,
disabilities and so on.
this again is the sweet spot for Katsu. Katsu, let me give you a little bit of a better history of how it was developed. After Dr. Sato decided that this was a real efficacious device, he sought the interest and support of cardiologists in Japan. And they quickly saw the benefits because by using Katsu, you are increasing the elasticity of the entire
Oh,
circulatory system. You're extending the range of capillaries, both in the fingertips and toes, but also in the brain. And it just makes the whole blood volume, the whole circulatory system improves. So they brought it in for testing at the University of Tokyo Hospital. And they did a 10-year study with 12,000 clients in the hospital,
wow.
2,000 of whom were in full cardiac rehab, recovering from heart attacks, stroke, that kind of thing. So you would think, and the test was for efficacy and safety. And you would think that with cardiac rehab clients, they wouldn't be letting them do this if it wasn't safe.
Yeah.
And that should help reassure people that when a person is an invalid or is disinclined to exercise or extremely frail or older, Katsu can be used in a very passive, sedentary mode and still give you a fairly high percentage of the biochemical results that you, Lisa, would get if you were out there using it in a high intense training
Wow.
situation.
So you can,
So this helps a person like your mom who doesn't want to go out and run miles, but if she can walk, if she enjoys just walking or maybe gardening or doing a little light housework, and she puts her armbands on while she's doing that, or she puts the leg bands on while she's doing that, it's such a gentle therapy that when you're wearing it, you don't feel as though you can't move or enjoy movement. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't restrict. And by just doing that in her normal daily activities, she can boost the hormonal response and begin to build those factors that will help the body preserve a better level of health as we get older.